"I can't take it anymore. I want to do it here and now," said the Apache girl to the young cowboy, her voice trembling as the desert wind stirred dust around their boots. The sun burned low over the rocks, lighting her face with a desperate glow as she held something tightly against her chest. The cowboy froze, torn between fear and duty, knowing this choice could bind their lives together or tear them apart. Because whatever she wanted to do here and now wasn't desire, it was survival, and the secret she carried would change everything. The river whispered against the stones as dusk wrapped the canyon in gold. The Apache girl knelt at the water's edge, clutching an old leather pouch to her chest. She didn't speak at first. She didn't have to. The tremble in her hands said more than any words could. Behind her, the young cowboy stood still, watching the wind lift strands of her hair, unsure if he should step closer or walk away before trouble found him again. Moments earlier, he had pulled her out of a dust storm that came rolling down the valley like a living thing, sand stinging his eyes, coat flapping, reins nearly ripped from his fingers. She had collapsed against him, breathless, shaking, whispering that she had something she needed to do. He thought she meant resting, drinking, catching her breath, but now, seeing her crouched at the river with the pouch pressed close, he realized she meant something else entirely. He crouched beside her, offering his canteen. "You're safe now," he said softly. She didn't drink. Instead, she tilted her face toward him, her eyes dark with an urgency he couldn't name. Behind them, the land was too quiet. No birds, no hoofbeats, no distant voices. The kind of silence that meant somebody was out there, watching, waiting. The cowboy knew the signs. He'd lived long enough on the edges of towns and trouble to feel danger before it showed its face. The girl opened the pouch just enough for him to glimpse what was inside. Folded papers, a carved wooden token, and a small piece of cloth stained with something dark and old. She pulled back before he could see more. "This cannot wait," she whispered. "If I don't do it now, they will find us." A gust of wind rattled the scrub brush behind them. The cowboy rose slowly, hand drifting toward the holster at his hip. Not to draw, just to feel something familiar under the weight of uncertainty. He scanned the ridge. Dust lifted off the rocks in thin veils, drifting like warning smoke. "Who's coming?" he asked. She didn't answer. She only stood, stepped closer, and pressed the pouch into his hands with a force that made his heart pound. Then came the sound he feared most, a single echoing knock carried by the wind. Not on wood, not on metal, but on something hollow, like a signal. A door had just opened in their fate, and whatever waited on the other side was already moving toward them. The young cowboy tightened his jaw as the last echo of that strange knock faded into the canyon. The Apache girl stood close enough for him to feel her breath on his sleeve, but her eyes were fixed on the ridge, wide and steady, as if she could see something moving beyond the rocks. The river kept whispering behind them, soft at first, then louder, like it sensed trouble drifting their way. He lifted the pouch she'd pressed into his hands. It felt heavier now, as if the secrets inside it leaned toward him, asking to be opened. But the girl stepped forward and placed her hand on his wrist, stopping him before he could loosen the leather tie. "Not here," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but her body didn't. That contrast made his stomach tighten. Something about her calmness, mixed with that fear she carried so quietly, felt more dangerous than anything he'd faced in saloons or on empty trails. He nodded once. "All right," he said. Her fingers eased from his wrist. Wind slid through the brush again, colder this time, bending the tall grass in one direction, as if pointing at something moving toward them. The cowboy stepped closer to the girl without thinking. It wasn't a bold gesture. It was protective, almost instinctual, the kind of care a man gives when he doesn't yet understand someone's danger, but feels it in his bones. "You're shaking," he said softly. "I'm not," she answered. But she was. Not from cold, from pressure, from whatever waited behind that knock carried by the wind. She pulled the long strands of her hair away from her face and looked back toward the riverbank. Something about the water unsettled her. Something she needed to reach or bury or finish before they were found. The cowboy lowered his voice. "Tell me what they want." Her jaw clenched. "Not what... who..." He watched her swallow hard. A single drop of water slid down her arm, not from the river, but from the sweat of fear she tried to hide. Her breath hitched just once before she steadied herself again. The cowboy felt his pulse rise, a quiet alarm telling him she was being hunted, and by someone who knew her well enough to track her through silence. She stepped toward a cluster of river stones, knelt, and lifted one with both hands. Beneath it lay fresh earth, turned recently, still soft, as if she had hidden something here before he found her on the trail. She brushed the soil aside quickly, fingers trembling despite her control. "You buried something here?" he asked. She nodded. He crouched beside her, lowering his voice. "Then we take it and go." "No," she whispered. "Not take. Destroy." That word hung heavy between them. Before he could ask another question, her hand struck something in the dirt. She pulled out a folded cloth bundle, tied with sinew. The bundle was small, but she held it with the care of someone holding a newborn. Her breath caught in her throat. She didn't open it. She simply pressed it to her forehead for a heartbeat, like a silent prayer. The cowboy felt it then, the shift in the air, a dread he couldn't name but recognized all the same. "What's inside that?" he asked. Her lips tightened. "Proof," she whispered, "and a promise." He didn't understand either word, but he understood the fear wrapped around them. Before she could say more, a crack of twigs echoed across the canyon, sharp, deliberate, not carried by the wind. The cowboy rose quickly, placing himself between the girl and the sound. His hand hovered near his holster, but he didn't draw, not yet, not until he saw what walked out from behind those rocks. The girl grabbed his sleeve. "No guns," she said. "They expect guns." "Then what do I do?" he asked. "Stand still," she said, "and listen." The brush rustled again. Another twig snapped. Something heavy moved behind a cluster of mesquite. The cowboy's heartbeat thudded in his ears, but he forced himself to breathe slow, to stay grounded. He listened, closer than he ever had. At first he heard nothing, then he heard it, faint but clear. A slow, steady tapping. Not footsteps, not hooves. A cane. Someone walking with the calm, steady rhythm of a man who believed nobody would dare challenge him. The cowboy felt the girl's grip tighten on his sleeve. Her breath shivered against his arm, and for the first time her fear broke through her quiet strength. "He's here," she whispered. "He found me." The tapping cane grew louder, coming toward them through the brush, methodical, confident, unhurried. The cowboy swallowed hard. "Who is it?" The girl's answer was barely a breath. "The one who decides my fate." The cane struck a stone, sending a metallic ring echoing across the canyon. At that exact moment, a shadow stretched across the riverbank, thin, tall, and unmistakably deliberate. Someone stepped into view, but the face stayed hidden behind the blinding glare of the dying sun. The cowboy didn't move as the shadow stretched long across the riverbank. The Apache girl pressed closer behind him, her breath thin and quick. The tapping cane continued its steady rhythm, a sound too calm for the growing fear in her eyes. The cowboy's fingers twitched near his belt, but he kept his hand off his gun like she'd begged him. The sun dipped lower, turning the canyon walls a deep red, as if the earth itself sensed trouble coming. A tall figure finally stepped from behind the brush. A man older, broad-shouldered, dressed in a long coat that trailed dust as he walked. He carried the cane lightly, almost like a prop instead of support. His face stayed hidden under the brim of his hat, but his voice carried a cold echo when he spoke. "You two gave me quite the chase." The cowboy felt the girl flinch behind him. She didn't speak. She didn't breathe. Her silence felt heavier than the rocks around them. The man stopped several steps away, leaning slightly on the cane. "You didn't think you could hide here," he said. "Not from me." The cowboy's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" he asked. The man tilted his head. "What is owed?" he said. "Nothing more." The girl clutched the folded bundle tighter against her chest. Her knuckles turned white. The cowboy glanced down and saw the fear in her hands, the tremble she tried so hard to hide. "You stay back," the cowboy said. The man chuckled lightly. "Boy, I've dealt with harder men. You're not one." The cowboy's stomach twisted. The man's tone was polite. Too polite. The kind of politeness that hides a knife behind kind words, a courteous legal threat wrapped in honey. "I don't know your business," the cowboy said, "but she's not going with you." The man raised the cane slightly, resting the tip on a flat stone. "She has something that belongs to me," he said, "and she knows what awaits if she refuses to return it." The girl spoke up then, her voice barely steady. "It's not yours." The man's smile sharpened. "Everything becomes mine," he said, "once contracts are broken." The cowboy frowned. "Contracts?" The man nodded. "Debts, promises, payments." He tapped the cane again. "She ran, and she took what was meant to settle what she owed." The cowboy looked back at the girl. She shook her head slowly. "He lies," she whispered. The man lifted his chin. "Open the pouch," he said. "Let the boy see the truth." The cowboy felt the leather pouch in his hand like a burning coal. The girl grabbed his wrist quickly. "No," she said. "Don't." "Why?" he asked softly. "Because it changes everything," she said. The wind picked up then, swirling dust between them. The man's coat fluttered. The girl's hair whipped across her face. The river darkened with the fading light. The cowboy steadied himself. "You're not taking her," he said again. The man sighed like he'd been patient long enough. "Young men always think bravery is enough," he said, "but law is older than courage." He reached into his coat and slowly pulled out something, a folded sheet of paper sealed with wax. He held it up in the dim light. "A writ," he said. "Signed and witnessed." The girl shook her head fiercely. "That paper is false," she said. The man's smile deepened. "Show him," he said. "Let him decide." The cowboy didn't move. The man took another step closer. "You think you rescued her," he said, "but you only delayed what must happen." The girl stepped forward now, surprising the cowboy. "No," she said, "I won't go back." The man tapped his cane once, hard enough to echo across the canyon. "Then the writ stands," he said, "and anyone who shelters you stands against the law." The cowboy's heart pounded. "What law?" he demanded. The man looked at him finally, really looked, and the cowboy felt a chill race down his spine. "The kind that arrives before sunrise," the man said, "with badges and chains." The girl gasped softly. "You called them?" The man gave a polite nod. "Of course." The cowboy's pulse kicked like a horse spooked by thunder. "When?" he asked. The man glanced at the fading sun. "Hours ago." The cowboy turned toward the ridge. "What did you do?" he whispered. The girl clutched his sleeve. "They're already close," she said. "We need to run." But the man raised his cane again. "You won't outrun them," he said. "Not tonight." The cowboy scanned the horizon, breath turning sharp. The air thickened. The earth seemed to hold still, waiting. Then, far away but clear, a single metallic sound drifted down the canyon. A distant jingle of horse-tack, several horses, moving fast. The girl's voice broke. "They found us." A second sound followed. Low, steady, unmistakable. The ring of a badge against a deputy's vest. The cowboy grabbed her hand. The man with the cane smiled. The ridgeline darkened as silhouettes appeared, horses cresting the hill. Dust rolled down the ridge like a slow brown wave as the horses descended. The young cowboy felt the Apache girl's fingers dig into his sleeve. The man with the cane stayed where he was, calm as stone, as if he had ordered the sky itself to darken. The river behind them kept moving, but even its soft rush sounded nervous now. 4 riders came into view, moving in a tight line. Badges glinted on their vests. Pistols rode low on their hips. Their horses snorted, uneasy at the smell of tension in the air. The lead rider was older, hat pulled low, coat neat, boots polished, a man who liked things in order. He guided his horse to a stop a few paces from the cowboy, the girl, and the man with the cane. "Evening," the lead rider said. His voice was calm, almost kind. That scared the cowboy more than a shout would have. The man with the cane tipped his hat. "Sheriff," he said, "right on time." The Apache girl shrank behind the cowboy's shoulder. The sheriff's gaze flicked to her, then back to the man with the cane. "You said she'd be alone," the sheriff said. The man with the cane shrugged lightly. "Things change," he answered. "Strays gather." The cowboy stepped forward, feeling the girl's hand slide down his arm but not let go. "She's under my protection," he said. The sheriff studied him quietly. You know her?" he asked. "Know enough," the cowboy replied. "No, she's scared." The sheriff shifted in the saddle. "Fear doesn't prove innocence," he said. The man with the cane lifted the folded paper. "What proves it?" he said. "Is this writ?" One of the deputies leaned over to see. "You filed that in town?" he asked. "Filed, stamped, and signed," the man replied. The sheriff held out his hand. "Let me see." The man passed the paper up with a small smile. The sheriff broke the wax and read in silence. The wind tugged at the edges of the page, trying to peel it away. His eyes moved slowly, jaw tightening just a little at one corner. The Apache girl's whisper brushed the cowboy's arm. "He bought that signature," she said. The cowboy kept his voice low. "You can prove it." She hesitated, then nodded toward the bundle in her hands. "In here," she said. The sheriff finished reading. He folded the paper again, neat and careful. "According to this," he said, "she's bound by debt." The man with the cane nodded. "Her father's debt," he said. "Passed to her." The girl's voice cut through the air. "My father is dead," she said. "His debts died with him." The sheriff turned his horse slightly to face her. "Law says otherwise," he replied. "Debt can pass down." "Not this one," she said. The cowboy felt the tremor in her words, not weakness. Fury held tight. The sheriff sighed. "You ran from town, girl," he said. "That looks bad." "I ran from him," she answered. "Not from law." The man with the cane smiled thinly. "You see," he said. "Wild blood." "No respect," the cowboy's patience snapped. "You talk about respect," he said, "but you chase her like cattle." The sheriff's gaze hardened a notch. "Watch your tongue," he said. "You're not part of this." "I am now," the cowboy said. "I found her half buried in dust." He swallowed, then added, "She asked for help." The sheriff looked from the cowboy to the girl, then to the bundle against her chest. "What's in that?" he asked. Her arms tightened around it. "Truth," she said. "That not an answer," he replied. The man with the cane tapped his stick on stone. "She stole papers," he said. "Mine. Proof of her family's bargain." The girl shook her head. "Proof of his lies," she said. The sheriff leaned forward. "Show me," he said. "If you speak truth, let me see." The cowboy whispered, "You can trust him." She stared at the sheriff for a long second. Her eyes searched his face like she was weighing every line, every crease. "He listens," she said softly. "That's more than most." Carefully, she stepped around the cowboy, still close enough to touch his sleeve if she needed to. She untied the bundle's string with slow, careful fingers. Inside lay several folded pages and a small carved token of dark wood. She held the token first. "My father's mark," she said. "Made by our own hand." The sheriff nodded once. "And the pages?" he asked. She passed them up to him with both hands. Her fingers lingered on the paper a heartbeat longer than needed, like she was letting go of something heavy. The sheriff spread the sheets across his saddle. He read in silence. The deputies shifted in their saddles, exchanging uneasy glances. The man with the cane stood very still now, eyes fixed on the sheriff's mouth as it tightened phrase by phrase. Finally, the sheriff exhaled. "These are land papers," he said. The girl nodded. "My father's land," she answered. "Taken by trick." The cowboy frowned. "What kind of trick?" he asked. She pointed at the bottom of the page. "Look at the witness mark," she said. The sheriff brought the sheet closer to his face. He studied the ink, then the seal stamped near it. His brows drew together. "That's my seal," he murmured. The deputies stiffened. "Beg your pardon, Sheriff," one asked. The sheriff's face darkened. "I never signed this," he said. His gaze snapped to the man with the cane. "You used my seal," he said. The man's smile barely wavered. "Clerks make mistakes," he answered. "Hands slip, ink spreads." The sheriff's voice cooled. "That not a mistake," he said. "That's forgery." The wind surged through the canyon, rattling leaves, tugging at hats. The earth seemed to lean closer, listening. The Apache girl took a small step forward. "Now you see," she said. "He owns nothing." The cowboy felt a faint release in his chest, a tiny breath of victory. Someone finally believed her, but the sheriff's eyes were still troubled. He folded the forged paper, and tucked it into his coat. "This doesn't clear everything," he said. "How not?" the cowboy asked. The sheriff looked toward the ridge. "There's another order," he said. "Came by telegram." The deputies lowered their eyes. The man with the cane smiled again, thin and pleased. "What order?" the girl asked. The sheriff hesitated, then spoke. "One I can't ignore," he said. "Not even for you." A heavy silence fell over the riverbank. Even the water seemed to hush. The cowboy swallowed. "What does it say?" he asked. The sheriff met his eyes with quiet regret. "It says she's not just tied to a debt," he said slowly. "She's wanted." The girl's knees almost buckled. "For what?" she whispered. The sheriff's answer came low and heavy. "For a crime she swears she never committed." He reached into his coat and pulled out a crumpled telegram slip. The paper shook slightly in his hand as he unfolded it. He turned it so they could see a single brutal word stamped across the top. "Wanted." And beneath it, a line that made the cowboy's blood run cold. "Bring her in alive. If she resists, send proof." The sheriff closed the telegram slowly. "Now you understand," he said. "This isn't only local anymore." Behind him, one deputy reached for a length of chain. The word "wanted" hung in the air like a noose. The Apache girl's breath stuttered. The cowboy stepped closer without thinking, his shoulder brushing hers as if his body could shield her from the paper alone. The sheriff folded the telegram, but its weight still lay heavy on every face in the canyon. A deputy shifted his horse. "Sheriff," he said quietly, "orders are orders." The sheriff didn't answer. He stared at the girl, his jaw tight with something caught between duty and doubt. The man with the cane tapped his stick against a stone. "There you have it," he said. "She's a fugitive." The cowboy snapped. "You forged documents. You lied." The man shrugged. "Unrelated," he said. "Her crime is separate." The Apache girl shook her head. "I harmed no one," she whispered. The sheriff finally spoke. "I believe you," he said, "but belief isn't enough." The cowboy stepped forward. "What's the charge?" The sheriff hesitated. "Arson," he said. "A house burned. A man nearly died." The girl froze. "No," she said. "That was not me." The man with the cane smirked. "Prove it," he said. The girl lifted her chin. "I was with my mother that night," she said. "Far from town." The sheriff frowned. "She gone?" he asked. The girl nodded slowly. "Buried," she whispered. The sheriff's eyes dimmed. "So no witness for you," he said. Silence smothered the canyon. Wind whirled dust around their boots, wrapping their legs in a slow brown coil. The cowboy could feel the girl's fear trembling through her sleeve. He turned to the sheriff. "Let her speak," he said. "She did," the sheriff replied. "That's all she has." "She has me," the cowboy said. A deputy snorted. You just met her." The cowboy kept his gaze steady. "Still enough," he said. The sheriff exhaled, frustrated. "This isn't about trust," he said. "This is about orders from higher up." The man with the cane stepped forward a pace. "She stole from me," he said. "Ran from town. Now she faces justice." The girl's voice cracked. "You wanted my father's land," she said. "You framed me to get it." The man smiled thinly. "Hard to frame someone who runs," he replied. The cowboy's fist clenched. "She ran because you hunted her," he said. The man with the cane tilted his head. "Boy," he said, "you don't understand how law works." The cowboy didn't move. "I understand right and wrong," he said. "That's enough." A flicker of approval passed through the sheriff's eyes, but only for a second. Then the deputies dismounted. Boots hit the ground, chains rattled. The girl stumbled back, clutching the bundle to her chest. The cowboy stepped in front of her. "You're not taking her," he said. One deputy drew the chain. "Move aside," he ordered. The cowboy didn't budge. "Try me," he said. The sheriff raised a hand. "Stand down," he said. "No chains yet." The deputies froze, but the chain still hung from one of their hands, heavy and threatening. "Sheriff!" the man with the cane protested. "She is bound by law." The sheriff turned a cold stare on him. "You forged my seal," he said. "That complicates your claims." "But not the warrant," the man replied. "She still belongs in custody." The sheriff didn't deny it. The Apache girl's knees weakened. She whispered, "If they take me, I won't return." The cowboy whispered back, "I won't let them." She blinked hard, fighting tears she refused to let fall. The sheriff rubbed his forehead. Torn. "Girl," he said softly, "if you run again, they'll shoot." The man with the cane interrupted. "I requested she be taken alive," he said, "but accidents happen." The girl inhaled sharply. The cowboy nearly swung at the man then and there, but the sheriff's hand dropped to his revolver, an unspoken warning. "Don't," the sheriff said quietly. The cowboy forced himself still. The sheriff took a slow breath. "Let me ask again," he said to the girl. "Where were you the night of the fire?" "With my mother," she said. "And no one else saw?" "No." The sheriff lowered his eyes. "That makes this hard." The cowboy stepped forward. "She can't prove innocence," he said. "Then prove guilt." The sheriff looked up sharply. "What you mean?" "Who set the fire?" the cowboy asked. "Who benefits from it?" The girl's gaze darted to the man with the cane. The sheriff noticed. His eyes narrowed. "You accusing someone?" he asked the man. "Of course not," the man replied. "Why would I burn property I wanted?" The sheriff paused. "You gain insurance," he said, "or leverage." The deputies exchanged glances. The man with the cane's jaw twitched, just once. The sheriff saw it. He stepped closer. "Funny thing," he said. "You knew she ran before anyone else did." The canyon fell silent. The man with the cane lifted his chin. "I have eyes everywhere." "That's so," the sheriff said. "Always," he replied. The sheriff studied him for a long moment. Then, far up the canyon, a sharp, piercing whistle sliced through the air. The girl gasped. "That's them," she whispered. "His men." The cowboy spun toward the sound. The sheriff's face blanched. The man with the cane smiled, tapping his stick once. The whistle echoed through the canyon like a blade drawn slow and cold. The cowboy pulled the Apache girl behind him, his hand steady despite the tremor in her breath. The sheriff stiffened, scanning the ridge with narrowed eyes. Even the deputies shifted uneasily, their hands drifting toward their belts. The man with the cane tilted his head as if listening for footsteps only he could hear. "They're close," he murmured. The cowboy snapped, "Who's coming?" The man answered calmly, "Men who finish what law cannot." The sheriff glared at him. "You sent riders," he demanded. "They ride for coin," the man replied. "And loyalty." The sheriff's jaw tightened. "You overstepped." "I ensured the outcome," the man said. "You hesitated." The cold politeness in his words made the girl shudder. The sheriff turned to the deputies. "Stay sharp," he ordered. "Eyes up." Another whistle cut through the air, short, urgent. A reply. The cowboy felt the earth under his boots vibrate faintly. Hoofbeats, not many, but fast, determined, coming straight toward them. The girl whispered, "They're hunters." The cowboy frowned. "Bounty hunters." She swallowed. "Worse?" Before he could ask more, dust rose at the end of the canyon. A cluster of riders appeared. 3 at first, then a 4th lagging behind. No badges, no uniforms, long coats, bandanas, rifles slung across their backs. The deputies stiffened. "Sheriff," one said, "we didn't call them." "I know," the sheriff muttered. The leading rider pulled his horse to a halt with a hard yank. His voice carried across the canyon like gravel rolled in iron. "Hand her over," he said. "She's wanted." The sheriff raised his chin. "By whose authority?" The rider held up a crumpled paper. "Telegram," he said. "Same as you got." The sheriff didn't move. "You ain't sworn men," he said. "This is my jurisdiction." The rider smirked. "Not tonight." The man with the cane stepped forward. "They're here for me," he said. "They ensure justice is done." The cowboy spat in the dirt. "You hired guns." "Necessary hands," the man corrected. "When law grows soft," the sheriff bristled. "No one overrides my office." "Your seal was forged," one deputy whispered. "That's why we fix this clean," the rider said. "Girl comes with us." The Apache girl pressed closer to the cowboy. "I didn't burn anything," she whispered. "I swear it." "I know," he murmured. She shook her head. "They won't care." The riders spread into a shallow half-circle, boxing them against the river. One of them cocked his rifle, not raising it, but letting the sound echo. A threat wrapped in metal. The cowboy's hand drifted to his holster. The girl grabbed his wrist. "No guns," she said. Not first. The sheriff raised a hand. Nobody fires, he warned. Not unless I say. The lead rider laughed. You won't say. He nudged his horse forward a step. Girl, he said, drop that bundle. She held it tighter. No, she said. Drop it, he repeated. The cowboy stepped between them. She's not giving you anything. The rider's smile faded. Move, boy. No, the cowboy said. The man with the cane tapped his stick. Sheriff, he said, you know what must be done. The sheriff didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the girl. Something in his expression softened, not pity, but understanding. A man who'd seen too many twisted laws and too many poor souls crushed under them. He spoke quietly. Girl, what's in that bundle is your proof, right? She nodded. And you believe it clears you? Yes. Then let me see the rest, he said. She hesitated. The man with the cane barked. Do not show him. The sheriff glared. You forged my seal, he said. You lost the right to speak. The man's eyes flashed, but he said nothing. The girl loosened the cloth slowly. Inside lay an additional item tucked beneath the pages, a long strip of charred leather. She handed it up to the sheriff with shaking hands. He held it to the fading light. Burned, he murmured. She nodded. From the fire. My father kept records on this. Names, deals, payments. She pointed to faint markings still visible along the edge. He wrote the truth, she said. The sheriff squinted. These initials match his, he said. The cowboy leaned in. What does it say? The sheriff read again. It marks who threatened him, he said quietly. And why? The girl whispered. Read the last line. The sheriff did. His breath caught. His eyes snapped to the man with the cane. It names you, he said. The man's cane gripped the ground hard. A dying man's lies, he said. Nothing more. But the sheriff wasn't listening. He turned to the riders. You stand down, he ordered. This girl stays with me. The lead rider sneered. Not happening. The sheriff's hand slipped to his holster. It will, he said. The air tightened. The river stilled. The riders shifted. Then the fourth rider, the one who'd hung back, nudged his horse forward. He lowered his bandana, and the cowboy froze. Because the rider's face wasn't the face of a hired gun. It was the face of someone the girl clearly recognized. Her breath left her in a single broken gasp. She whispered, No, not you. The rider looked at her with cold, heavy eyes. The Apache girl stared at the fourth rider, as if the ground had opened beneath her feet. The cowboy felt her grip tighten, her breath collapse inward. The rider didn't smile. He didn't nod. He only looked at her with a cold knowing, like someone who had followed her shadow for miles. The sheriff broke the silence. You know him? He asked. The girl's voice cracked. He followed me, she whispered. The rider's jaw tensed. You ran, he said. I tracked. The cowboy stepped in front of the girl. Why chase her? He demanded. The rider's eyes hardened. She carries what's mine, he said. The cowboy frowned. You mean the papers? No, the rider replied. The truth. The wind swept down the canyon, carrying dust into their faces. The deputies shielded their eyes. The lead hired rider shifted his horse, uneasy. The man with the cane tapped the stone again. Stand aside, he told the cowboy. This is family business. The girl recoiled. You're not my family, she said. The man tilted his head. No, he answered. But he is. The cowboy froze. He slowly turned to the girl. You related, he whispered. Her lips trembled. Not by blood, she said. By force. The rider dismounted. Boots hit the ground. Dust rose in a slow swirl. He walked toward them, each step heavy, controlled. The sheriff raised a hand. Stop there, he warned. The rider didn't stop. She knows what she did, he said. The girl shook her head fiercely. I did nothing, she said. You burned it, he replied. Her breath stuttered. No, she whispered. I watched it burn. The cowboy glanced at her sharply. Watched what burn? She swallowed hard. The house, she said. But I didn't start it. The rider stepped closer. You ran, he said. That's guilt. I ran from him, she shot back. The cowboy's jaw clenched. She said he threatened her father, he said. The rider looked at him coldly. Her father owed, he said. He paid nothing. The cowboy pointed at the burned leather strip. He wrote your mark, he said. He named you. The rider's eyes darkened. A dying man's blame, he said. I protected her. The sheriff's voice cut in. You benefited from the fire, he said. The rider stiffened. I lost property, he said. You gained land claims, the sheriff replied. The man with the cane stepped forward fast, tapping the ground sharply. Sheriff, he snapped, watch your tongue. But the sheriff didn't flinch. I said what I see, he replied. The Apache girl stepped out from behind the cowboy. Her knees shook, but she stood straight. Her voice was thin but steady. You wanted our land, she said. You wanted my father gone. The rider stared at her without blinking. You ran to hide the truth, he said. She held up the burned strip. This is truth, she said. The man with the cane hissed, Girl, stop speaking. She didn't stop. You threatened him, she said. You came at night. I heard you. The rider's expression tightened. You heard nothing, he said. The cowboy stepped between them again. She was there, he said. The rider's finger twitched toward his holster. Move aside, he said. The cowboy didn't move. Make me, he said. The sheriff's hand hovered near his gun. No one draw, he warned. The hired riders shifted uneasily. One muttered, This is turning ugly. Dust rolled in heavy sheets now, sweeping across the canyon floor like a rising tide. The horses stamped nervously. The river hissed louder as wind whipped the surface. The girl looked at the sheriff with wide, unshaking eyes. My father begged him to stop, she said. He pushed him. The fire caught. I pulled him out. The cowboy stared at her in shock. You saved him. She nodded once. But he died at dawn. The sheriff's breath caught. You never set the fire, he said. No, she whispered, but I saw who did. All eyes turned to the rider. He said nothing. The man with the cane stepped closer. Sheriff, he said, none of this matters. Orders stand. The sheriff glared. My orders come from truth, he said. The man's voice sharpened. Your badge comes from paper, he replied, and paper bends. The deputies looked at each other uneasily. The sheriff lifted the burned strip again. This changes everything, he said. The rider finally spoke, voice low and dangerous. You can't prove anything, he said. The sheriff stared him down. I think I can, he said. How? The rider asked. The sheriff's eyes shifted to the riverbank. To someone else, he said. Someone who saw the fire, too. The girl's eyes widened. My uncle, she whispered. He was nearby. He saw a figure. The cowboy blinked. Where is he? The sheriff pointed toward the path behind the ridge. He sent me a message, the sheriff said. He walked here before dawn. The girl grabbed the cowboy's arm. He's alive, she asked. Yes, the sheriff said, and he's coming. The rider stiffened. The man with the cane froze. Then, from far up the canyon, a single lantern light flickered into view. Slow, steady, moving toward them, the girl's breath broke. He's here, she whispered. But the sheriff's face changed. Something was wrong. The lantern swayed wildly, as if carried by a man stumbling or fleeing. A shadow followed him, tall, fast, too fast. The lantern's wobbling glow cut through the darkness like a wounded heartbeat. The Apache girl stepped forward, eyes wide. That's him, she whispered. That's my uncle. The cowboy grabbed her arm gently. Wait, he said. Something's wrong. The man behind the lantern stumbled down the rocky path, one hand clutching a branch for balance. His breath came in harsh gasps, echoing off the canyon walls. Behind him, a shadow moved, fast in long strides that didn't belong to a tired man. The sheriff raised his hand. Everyone stay still, he ordered. The deputies tightened their grips on their belts. The hired riders straightened, unease flickering across their faces. Even the man with the cane shifted his stance, eyes narrowing. The uncle stumbled closer, waving the lantern weakly. Help, he rasped. Please. The cowboy stepped out to meet him. Easy, he said. You're hurt. The uncle collapsed to his knees beside the cowboy, clutching his chest. They found me, he whispered. They followed me. The girl knelt beside him. Uncle, she breathed. "You're alive." His trembling hand cupped her cheek. "You ran," he said softly. "You shouldn't have run alone." Tears welled in her eyes. "I had no choice." "You did," he replied. "You always have a choice." Before the cowboy could ask what he meant, the man's eyes darted upward, toward the ridge he'd come from. The cowboy followed his gaze. The shadow stopped, stood still, watching. The sheriff pointed. "Show yourself," he called. Silence. Then the shadow moved slowly down the slope, stepping into a shaft of moonlight. It wasn't a man from town. It wasn't a rider. It wasn't a deputy. It was another hired hunter, one larger and broader than the others, coat torn, eyes wild with purpose. A rifle hung from his shoulder, but his hands were empty, clenched tight. The lead rider swore under his breath. "I didn't call him," he muttered. The man with the cane frowned. "I didn't either." The sheriff's voice sharpened. "Then who did?" The broad hunter's voice rumbled. "I ride for no man," he said. "I ride for payment." The cowboy stepped back. "What payment?" he asked. The hunter pointed at the Apache girl. "She's worth more alive," he said, "but dead still pays." The girl gasped. "No," she whispered. "No, no." The cowboy stepped in front of her. "You'll go through me first." The hunter grinned. "I plan to—" The sheriff's voice thundered. "Not one step further." The hunter ignored him and kept walking. One deputy lifted his revolver. "Sheriff!" "Not yet," the sheriff snapped. "We do this clean." The hunter stopped only when he reached the lantern light, boots sinking into soft earth. The uncle struggled to stand. "He burned the house," he choked out. "He started it." The girl froze. "Not him," she whispered. "It was the other one." The uncle shook his head, pointing a shaking finger. "No," he rasped. "He set it. I saw him." The cowboy stared at the young rider, the one she'd recognized earlier. The rider stiffened. "He lies," he snarled. The man with the cane stepped between them. "This is enough," he said coldly. "Sheriff, take the girl." The cowboy's teeth clenched. "You don't give orders." "She belongs to the law," the man said. "She belongs to truth," the cowboy replied. The sheriff spoke then, calm but tense. "Girl, your uncle says this hunter started the fire." The girl shook her head. "No," she whispered. "The young rider threatened my father. The hunter came later, after flames rose." The hunter laughed darkly. "Believe who you want," he said. "I still get paid." The sheriff looked between all of them, torn. "There's more here than truth," he said. "There's something missing." The uncle raised a trembling hand. "In my saddlebag," he rasped. "Proof." The cowboy reached toward him. "Where?" The uncle pointed weakly toward the ridge. "I hid it before they chased me," he said. "In a hollow log, near the cedar tree." The girl squeezed his hand. "You came back for us," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "I couldn't let lies win." The sheriff turned to the deputies. "Go fetch the saddlebag," he ordered. "Bring whatever's inside." But before they could move, the broad hunter barked. "No one touches it." The deputies froze. "That proof ruins us," the hunter snapped. "Her father wrote everything." The cowboy's breath caught. "So the log holds the rest?" "Yes," the uncle whispered. "Names, deals, everything." The sheriff exhaled sharply. "That settles it." A gunshot split the night. Everyone ducked. The shot didn't hit a man. It hit the lantern. Glass shattered. Fire spilled. Darkness swallowed them. The sheriff shouted, "Hold your fire!" The cowboy grabbed the girl. "Stay close," he whispered. The hunter's voice echoed in the dark. "No more evidence," he growled. "No more delays." The sheriff tried to regain control. "All riders, stand down." No one listened. Hooves thrashed. Metal clattered. Men shouted. Chaos broke open like a barn door in a storm. Then, through the darkness, a second shot cracked. But this time someone screamed. The scream tore through the darkness like a ripped sheet. The cowboy yanked the Apache girl down behind a fallen log, covering her with his coat. The sheriff crouched nearby, searching the shadows with sharp, steady eyes. Hoofs pounded. Men cursed. The river hissed louder, stirred by the sudden chaos. The girl clutched the cowboy's arm. "Who was hit?" she whispered. "No idea," he answered. "Stay low." A deputy shouted in the dark. "Sheriff! Someone fired from the ridge." The sheriff barked back. "Hold positions!" "No shooting blind," another voice, one of the hired riders, yelled. "It wasn't us." The broad hunter's voice rumbled through the dark. "Wasn't me either." The cowboy scanned the shadows. "Then who?" he muttered. A cold gust swept the canyon, scattering the last sparks of the shattered lantern. The glow died completely, plunging everything into black silence except for the ragged breathing of frightened men. The man with the cane spoke then, calm, steady. "Sheriff," he said, "light another lantern." "No one moves," the sheriff replied. The cane tapped once. "You're losing control," the man said. "I'll regain it," the sheriff answered. The girl pressed closer. "Cowboy, someone wants us blind." He nodded. "I know." A whisper rose behind them, soft, thin. "The uncle." "Girl," he murmured, barely audible. "Someone climbed above us, before I reached you." The cowboy leaned in. "You saw him?" "Yes," the uncle gasped. "A man in a long coat." The cowboy tensed. "Long coat," he whispered, "like the cane man." The uncle shook his head weakly. "No, different, taller." The girl's eyes widened. "Another hunter?" "Not sure," the uncle said. "But he followed me." A quiet click echoed to their left, a rifle being cocked. The cowboy froze. "Someone's near." The sheriff hissed. "Who's there?" Silence. Then, a voice, low and strained. The young rider. "I'm hit," he gasped. The girl stiffened. "Where is he?" she whispered. A weak groan answered from the dark. "Here, by the rocks." The sheriff moved toward the sound. "Stay still," he said. "No," the cowboy whispered. "Could be a trap." But the girl crawled forward anyway, driven by something deeper. "He followed me," she said. "I must see." The cowboy grabbed her wrist. "Not safe." She met his eyes. Fear, yes, but something else too. Courage worn thin but holding. "Let me go," she whispered. He hesitated, then released her slowly. "I'm right behind you." They crawled toward the groan, inch by inch. The sheriff met them halfway, revolver drawn but held low. The young rider lay slumped against a boulder, hand pressed to his arm. Blood seeped through his sleeve. His face was pale, twisted with pain. The cowboy asked, "Who shot you?" The rider swallowed. "Didn't see. Shadow moved, then fire." The sheriff studied him. "You saw nothing. Only a coat," the rider said. "Long and dark." The girl whispered, "You chased me before. Why?" The rider closed his eyes. "I was told to," he said. "Told to bring you back." "By who?" the cowboy asked. The rider's gaze flicked toward the man with the cane. The girl exhaled sharply. "Knew it," she whispered. But the rider shook his head weakly. "Not him," he gasped. "Another." The cowboy stiffened. "Another who?" Before the rider could speak, the broad hunter stomped closer, voice echoing. "Everyone stay put. Lantern coming." A deputy fumbled for a match. "Hold still," he said. "I'll light it." The broad hunter barked. "Do it." Flint struck. A spark flared. A small lantern burst to life, casting shaky gold light across the canyon. The riders, the deputies, the sheriff, the cowboy, the Apache girl, all squinted through the light's glare. The man with the cane stood calmly beside his horse, but someone else was missing. The broad hunter frowned. "Where's the fourth?" The sheriff turned in a slow circle. "Where's the tall rider?" he asked. The cowboy looked around sharply. "Gone," he whispered. The girl swallowed hard. "He was the shadow," she said. "He followed my uncle." The broad hunter stomped toward the ridge. "He's out there," he growled. "Hiding," the sheriff called out. "Show yourself!" Silence. Then a faint thump echoed from above. Soft, heavy, wrong. The cowboy tilted his head. "That wasn't footsteps." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "No," he said. "That was a body." A second later, something rolled down the slope, and something limp, something that hit the ground with a dull, sickening weight. The lantern light swung toward it. The missing rider lay at the base of the ridge, not breathing. Neck twisted. The deputies gasped. The girl covered her mouth. The cowboy froze. The sheriff whispered, "He didn't fall," because pinned to the rider's coat was a small, sharp arrow, a style used only by one tribe, a style the girl recognized instantly. Her voice broke. "No," she said. "That can't be." The cowboy turned to her. "What is it?" he asked. She stared at the arrow, trembling. "That's my tribe's mark," she whispered. "And only one man shoots that way." The sheriff swallowed. "Who?" the girl answered with a trembling breath. "He's coming." A cold wind swept the canyon, and a solitary figure stepped onto the ridge above them. The figure on the ridge stood still as stone, one hand resting on a bow, the other holding another thin arrow tipped with dark feathers. The moon caught the metal point, making it gleam like ice. The Apache girl grabbed the cowboy's coat, her fingers cold despite the heat still rolling from the canyon floor. "That's him," she whispered. "He followed me here." The cowboy kept her close. "Who is he?" Her voice shook. "A guardian, but not mine." The sheriff lifted his lantern. "You there," he called. "Step into the light." The figure didn't obey. He only shifted his stance, weight balanced like a predator ready to strike. The broad hunter snarled, "Another one!" "How many chase this girl?" The man with the cane tapped his stick twice. "He's not with us," he muttered, "and that it concerns me." The deputies lifted their guns instinctively. The sheriff barked, "Lower those, not until I say—" The girl stepped forward a little. "He protected my tribe once," she said, "but he obeys no one." The cowboy frowned. "He shoot the rider." "Yes," she whispered. "He warns through death." The sheriff called out again, "State your business." Finally, the man on the ridge spoke. His voice was deep, calm, heavy as riverbed stone. "She carries truth," he said, "and truth must live." The hired riders tensed. One muttered, "What does that mean?" The cowboy asked, "You here to help her?" The figure answered, "I am here to stop lies." The uncle, still weak on the ground, lifted his head. "He followed me," he rasped. "Watched me hide the records." The sheriff narrowed his eyes. "You saw him?" The uncle nodded. "His shadow walked behind mine." The girl took a trembling breath. "He protects the past," she whispered. "But the past hurts him." The man with the cane spoke sharply. "You have no authority here," he yelled. "Stand down." The archer didn't move. "You forged papers," he said. "I saw you deliver coin." Gasps spread through the canyon. The sheriff stiffened. "You saw him bribe someone?" the sheriff asked. "Yes," the archer replied. "He bought a false seal." The man with the cane clenched his jaw. "You can't prove that." The archer raised one arrow slowly. "I can," he said. "Your coin purse fell." He reached into his coat and pulled something out, a leather pouch, stamped with the same unique mark burned into the forged strip found earlier. The man with the cane's face drained of color. The sheriff stepped forward. "That pouch yours?" he asked. "No," the cane man snapped. "It was stolen." The archer tossed it down the slope. "You dropped it," he said, "while paying for lies." The deputies exchanged nervous looks. The cowboy leaned toward the girl. "That helps us," he whispered. "No," she said softly. "It makes him desperate." The cane man's hand tightened around his stick. His voice softened dangerously. "Sheriff," he said. "You must act—" "I am acting," the sheriff replied. The cane man nodded once. "Then arrest her," he said. The sheriff's eyes sharpened. "No," he said, "not now." The cane man stepped closer, coat brushing dust. "You defy the order." The sheriff held his ground. "I follow truth," he said, "and truth points at you." The cane man laughed quietly. "Truth," he muttered, "truth is what survives on paper." "And what men die for," the archer added. The cowboy sensed the shift, a dangerous stillness settling between all sides, two forces now pulling, the law and the lies behind it, and one man on the ridge ready to strike either side. A deputy whispered, "Sheriff, what now?" The sheriff took a slow breath. "We go for the saddlebag," he said. "We get the full record." The broad hunter growled, "No one touches that bag." "It's evidence," the sheriff replied. "It's a death sentence," the hunter snapped. "For who?" the cowboy asked. The hunter glared. "For all of us." The girl trembled. "They want it gone," she whispered. "They fear my father's words." The uncle coughed. He wrote the names, he rasped. Wrote the plan. Wrote everything. The man with the cane barked, "Enough! Sheriff, take the girl now!" The sheriff shook his head. "We settle this right." The cane man snarled, "You're finished if you refuse." "Then I'm finished," the sheriff said. The cowboy stepped closer to the girl. "We need that log," he whispered. "Yes," she said, "but someone waits there." The archer suddenly spoke again. "No one reaches the cedar alone," he warned. "Someone guards it." "Who?" the cowboy demanded. The archer pointed down the dark ridge. "Another hunter," he said. "Silent. Patient." The deputies stiffened. "You mean there's more?" one asked. The archer lowered his bow. "He waits for the first man to try," he said. The canyon went dead calm. No wind, no river sound, only the pounding of hearts. The sheriff exhaled. "Then we move together," he said. The archer nodded. "I lead," he said. The hired riders bristled. "We don't follow him," one yelled. But the sheriff raised a hand. "You do tonight." The archer stepped down the ridge, boots barely stirring dust. His shadow stretched long across the canyon floor. He lifted his bow. "It begins," he said. The cowboy swallowed hard. "What begins?" The archer looked at the cedar path. "The hunt," he said, "for the man who burned everything." A cold wind struck the canyon then, and from deep among the trees came a sound that froze them all. Not a whistle, not a shot, a match striking, then a faint, rising glow. Someone was lighting a fire where the saddlebag was hidden. The glow rising from the cedar ridge turned the canyon walls orange, shifting like the mouth of a waking beast. The Apache girl grabbed the cowboy's arm. "They're burning the proof," she whispered. The sheriff swore under his breath. "Move!" he barked. "Everyone up the ridge!" But the archer held up one hand sharply. "No," he said. "We go quiet." The broad hunter scoffed. "Quiet, they're setting a blaze." The archer nodded once. "That blaze hides their footsteps." The cowboy frowned. "So they expect us to rush in?" "Yes," the archer said. "And they wait above." A tense silence rolled over the group. Heat from the distant fire pressed against them, carried by a rising wind that tugged at coats and rattled branches. The sheriff spoke low. "We split," he said. "Two groups." "No," the archer cut in. "One." "Why?" the cowboy asked. "They track fear," the archer said, "and divided men fear faster." The man with the cane stepped forward, tapping his stick sharply. "You follow this savage," he hissed. The archer's stare hardened. "I follow truth," he said. "You follow greed." The deputies glanced uneasily between them. The sheriff spoke calmly. "He's right. We stick together." The cane man's voice sharpened. "You'll lose your badge for this." "Maybe," the sheriff said, "but I'll keep my honor." The cowboy felt the girl trembling beside him. He lowered his voice. "You all right?" She nodded weakly. "I must reach the log," she whispered. "It holds everything." "We'll get there," he promised. Her fingers tightened on the burned strip. "This fire, it's what they wanted before," she said, "to erase his words." The uncle coughed violently, struggling to rise. "I can walk," he gasped. "Help me." The cowboy lifted him gently. "Lean on me." The archer scanned the ridge. "Follow the shadows," he said. "They reveal hunters." The girl frowned. "How?" "Light lies," he said. "Shadow does not." They climbed the rocky slope carefully, steps muffled under the rising wind. The fire ahead crackled louder, flames licking the low cedar branches. Halfway up, the sheriff signaled halt. "Listen," he whispered. The canyon fell silent for a moment. Then, a faint crunch. Someone stepping on dry needles. Then another. Closer. The broad hunter whispered, "They're circling." The archer nodded. "Two above. One behind." The cowboy stiffened. "Behind!" A snap came from the brush below. The archer spun, loosing an arrow in a blink. A grunt echoed. A figure tumbled from the shadows and hit the ground hard. One hunter down. The cane man hissed, "He kills without question." "He kills threats," the cowboy said. "You want him to stop your paid men." The cane man said nothing. The sheriff whispered, "We move." They pushed upward again, passing low branches, the smell of smoke thickening. The glow flickered brighter now. The fire had reached the cedar roots. The girl gasped. "They'll burn the saddlebag," the cowboy whispered. "Not if we get there first." The ridge narrowed. The archer raised his fist. "Stop!" he breathed. Two figures crouched by the cedar tree, silhouettes feeding the fire with bark, pushing flames toward a hollow in the trunk. The saddlebag. The sheriff whispered, "We go down slow." The broad hunter grinned. "Or fast." "No," the cowboy muttered. "Fast gets us shot." The girl squeezed his hand. "We can't wait." The archer whispered, "On my signal." The two figures bent toward the flames, their faces flickering in the firelight. One held a torch. The other gripped a knife, ready to hack apart the hollow where the evidence hid. The archer lifted 3 fingers. 3. The cowboy steadied his breath. 2. The sheriff raised his revolver. 1. The archer dropped his hand. They moved. The cowboy rushed down the slope with the sheriff beside him, boots slipping on loose dirt. The girl followed close, protecting the burned strip. Deputies fanned out to flank the ridge. The broad hunter barreled down like a bull. The 2 men near the fire spun around instantly. "Stop them!" one shouted. The cowboy lunged. The man with the knife swung wildly. The cowboy ducked, grabbed his arm, twisted, and sent him crashing into the cedar trunk. The sheriff fired once into the air. "No more burning!" The torchman dropped his flame in panic. The archer shot. Pinning the torch to the ground with an arrow, the girl rushed to the hollow log. "It's still here," she cried. "The bag!" But the man with the knife wasn't done. He staggered to his feet and reached into the fire, grabbing a burning branch. His eyes locked on the girl. He lifted the branch high. The cowboy shouted, "Look out!" The girl turned, just as the burning branch swung toward her. The archer fired, but missed by a hair as the girl ducked. The branch smashed into the cedar trunk, setting fresh needles ablaze. Flames climbed upward fast, racing along old saplines. The sheriff cursed, "Fire's spreading!" The broad hunter roared, "We'll all burn!" The cowboy grabbed the girl's hand. "We have to move!" But she clung to the saddlebag. "No!" she cried. "We need this!" The fire whooshed upward. Flames leapt from branch to branch, growing taller. The uncle yelled weakly, "Get away from the tree!" The cedar trunk groaned. Heat cracked the bark. The cowboy shouted, "Go!" But the girl didn't move. She stared upward, where the burning branches glowed brighter. And then the tree shuddered. A flaming limb snapped loose overhead. It cracked like a gunshot. Then it fell, straight toward all of them. The burning limb crashed down with a roar, sparks exploding like stars. The cowboy threw his arms around the Apache girl and pulled her sideways. They hit the ground hard as the branch slammed into the dirt where they'd just stood, flames leaping toward the cedar roots. Heat washed over them. Smoke clawed at their lungs. The sheriff dove behind a rock, dragging a deputy with him. The broad hunter rolled clear, swearing, boots kicking burning embers away. The uncle cried out as ash rained over him. "Girl," he wheezed, "get back." The girl coughed, clutching the saddlebag to her chest. "I still have it," she gasped. The cowboy helped her up, eyes stinging. "You're hurt?" She shook her head. "Just smoke, it's not fire." The archer rushed forward, stamping down flames spreading near the log. "Keep the fire low," he shouted. "Or the whole ridge goes." The 2 men who'd tried to burn the hollow scrambled backward, faces pale with fear now that the blaze threatened them too. The sheriff yelled, "You two, drop weapons!" They hesitated. The archer raised his bow. One man let his knife fall. The other tossed his torch aside. The broad hunter stomped on the smoldering branch, trying to break it. "Whole canyon will light," he growled. "This is madness." The man with the cane stayed uphill, away from the worst of the smoke. His eyes never left the girl clutching the bag. He called down, "Sheriff, that evidence burns or we all hang." The sheriff snapped back, "You're the only one hanging so far." The cowboy turned to the girl. "We need to see what's inside," he said. She nodded, coughing. "We can't lose it again." They ducked behind a boulder just away from the flames. The sheriff joined them, still watching the others, revolver ready. "Open it," he said. "Fast." The girl loosened the strap with shaking fingers. Inside lay a stack of folded pages, edges singed but still whole, and another small token carved from bone. She held up the token first. "My father's second mark," she whispered. "He used this for secret deals." The sheriff took one page and scanned it quickly. His face hardened. "These are transfer records," he said. "Money paid for fire and land." The cowboy asked, "They list who paid?" "Yes," the sheriff replied. "And who lit the match?" The girl leaned in. "Read," she said. "Please." The sheriff swallowed and read aloud. "Payment to hunters," he said slowly, "for removing problems around town edges." The broad hunter heard him. "That's a lie," he shouted. The sheriff turned the page. "Your description is here," he said, "and others." The archer's jaw tightened. "They burned for coin," he said, "and blamed her." Another page. The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "This one," he said, "names the Cane Man." The girl's breath hitched. The cowboy stared uphill. "He ordered the fire." The sheriff nodded. "Says he needed an excuse for seizure," he said. "Wanted land cheap." The man with the cane shouted down, "False! All forged!" The sheriff flipped to the last sheet. His voice dropped. "This one is worse," he said. The girl gripped his sleeve. "What does it say?" "It names who requested the warrant," he answered. "The one calling her wanted?" the cowboy asked. "Yes," the sheriff said. "And who urged them?" He turned the page so only the girl and cowboy could see. Her eyes widened. "No," she breathed. He signed it." The sheriff nodded grimly. The cowboy frowned. "Who?" The sheriff looked over at the younger rider, still clutching his wounded arm. "It was him," the sheriff said quietly. "He pushed for the warrant." The girl staggered. "You," she whispered, "you knew I was innocent?" The rider's lips trembled. "I thought, if you ran," he said, "it proved guilt." The archer spoke coldly. "You thought, Neo, you were paid." The rider's eyes flicked toward the Cane Man, then away. "I owed him," the rider muttered. "He owned my note." The sheriff exhaled sharply. "So he bought you too," he said. The Cane Man's voice carried down, sharp as a whip. "Enough of this theater," he said. "None of that holds in court." The sheriff raised the stack of papers. "With my seal forged on one," he said. "Oh, I think it will." Smoke thickened. Flames clawed higher up the cedar trunk. The uncle coughed hard, struggling for air. "We must leave," he rasped. "This tree, it will fall." The archer nodded. "Fire moves faster than guilt," he said. "We retreat." The broad hunter stamped another ember flat. "And what then?" he growled. "Ride back to town pretending nothing happened." The sheriff shook his head. "We ride back," he said. "But nothing is the same now." The girl hugged the saddlebag tight. "These pages clear me?" she asked. The sheriff looked at her, really looked, seeing not just a frightened girl but someone who had carried truth through dust and danger. "They clear most of it," he said. "But not all." Her shoulders slumped. "What else?" "The warrant still exists," he answered, "and men higher up want you in chains." The cowboy stepped between them. "What if you don't follow it?" he asked. The sheriff's jaw tightened. "Then I become the hunted," he said. The wind shifted suddenly, driving a wave of heat toward them. Sparks leapt past their faces. The archer shouted, "Down the slope!" "Now!" They scrambled away from the cedar as the trunk groaned again. The fire roared, feeding on sap and dry bark. Halfway down, the girl looked back. "The tree!" she whispered. The cedar shuddered once more, then toppled sideways with a thunderous crack, sending a storm of sparks into the night sky. The canyon lit up bright as day for a heartbeat, every face, every fear, every lie. Then darkness rushed in again, broken only by the weak lantern at the bottom of the ridge. The sheriff steadied himself. "We have to choose," he said quietly. "Choose what?" the cowboy asked. "Who we ride against," the sheriff replied. "The Cane Man, or the men behind him." The girl swallowed. "And me," she whispered. "What happens to me?" The sheriff looked at the saddlebag, then at the telegram tucked in his coat. Two worlds pressed against his chest. Orders and truth. He spoke so low only they heard. "I can't protect you out here," he said, "but I can in town, if I stand with you." The cowboy asked, At the station? The sheriff nodded. In front of every badge, he said, and every lie. The girl's voice trembled. They'll kill you, she said. Maybe, he replied. But running won't clear you. Standing might... Wind whistled through the canyon again, carrying distant sounds from the valley below. Hooves. Many hooves. The archer raised his head. They come, he said. The broad hunter frowned. Who now? The sheriff strained to listen. Not deputies, he murmured. Too many. The girl shivered. Who is it? The sheriff's face went pale. Town riders, he said. Citizens. Merchants. Men who profited from those fires. The cowboy's hand tightened on his belt. And they're riding toward us, the sheriff said. Or toward town, the archer added. The sheriff looked at the girl and the cowboy one more time. We have one chance, he said. Ride with me or run alone. The girl clutched the saddlebag, eyes shining with fear and stubborn fire. What we choose, the cowboy whispered, changes everything. Far below, torches flickered into view, a moving line of lights snaking toward the valley. The torches in the valley moved like a living river of fire, winding toward town. The sheriff steadied his breath, watching the light spread wider as more riders joined the line. They know, he said. That evidence threatens everything. The Apache girl clutched the saddlebag tighter. They'll burn the records, she whispered, just like before. The cowboy stepped in front of her. They're not taking it, he said. Not tonight. The archer lifted his bow. We ride, he said. Together. The sheriff nodded once. We cut them off at the crossroads. The broad hunter snorted. You really want to meet that many angry men? The sheriff answered. They think she's guilty. Show them she's not. The cane man stepped forward, tapping his stick hard. You won't make it, he said. They'll stop you first. The sheriff glared at him. Then stay here, he said. Wait for judgment. The cane man's voice sharpened. My men ride with that group. The cowboy's eyes narrowed. Your men. You sent them. The cane man hesitated, only for a breath. Then, they enforce what's owed. The sheriff scoffed. They enforce your greed. The girl spoke up, voice trembling but clear. They kill to hide lies, she said. My father saw it. The cane man's jaw clenched. Your father was weak, the cowboy snapped. He died protecting truth. The cane man pointed his stick at the girl. She belongs in chains, he hissed. She brings ruin. The sheriff stepped between them. No, he said. She brings justice. The torches below grew brighter, closer, spreading like wildfire toward the valley floor. The sheriff holstered his revolver. Mount up, he ordered. We ride now. The cowboy helped the girl onto a horse, keeping one hand on the reins. The uncle climbed shakily onto the broad hunter's saddle, coughing but determined. The archer swung onto his own horse with silent grace. The cane man stayed on foot, glaring at all of them. You ride toward death, he said. The sheriff replied, We ride toward truth. They kicked forward. The posse thundered down the ridge, hooves pelting dust behind them. Wind tore at their coats. Sparks drifted in the air from the dying cedar fire behind them. The girl leaned forward, gripping the cowboy's shoulder. Don't stop, she whispered. No matter what. I won't, he said. They reached the valley floor as the torchlight line curved toward the town road. The sheriff lifted a lantern high and shouted, Hold, stop there. The leading townsmen slowed, unsure. A few raised rifles. Others pointed accusing fingers. One man yelled, She's wanted. Another shouted, The girl burned the house. The sheriff rode forward. She didn't, he said. She was framed. The torches wavered. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The sheriff raised the saddlebag. These papers show who paid for fires, he shouted. Who forged my seal, who framed her father, who lied to you all. The cane man stumbled into view behind the group of riders. Lies, he cried. He twists truth. The sheriff held up the forged seal page. This is my mark, he said, and I never signed it. Gasps spread among the riders. The archer rode forward, pointing an arrow at the cane man. He paid hunters to burn, he said, and blame others. The cane man snapped, You trust a savage. The archer's voice cut like stone. You trust coin, he said. The crowd of townsmen shifted uneasily. Some lowered torches, others tightened fists around reins. The cowboy nudged his horse beside the sheriff. "She saved her father," he called. "She didn't kill him." The uncle raised a shaking hand. "I saw the truth," he rasped. "I wrote it. I hid it. I bled for it." A deputy rode forward, holding the burned leather strip. "Her father marked the cane man," he said, "for threats, for fire." The sheriff nodded solemnly. "And for murder." The cane man sputtered. "You have no proof." The sheriff lifted another page. "We have this," he said, "and witnesses and a forged seal." He turned to the crowd. "Stand aside," he said. "We bring the truth to town." But the cane man wasn't done. He pointed at the young rider, the one who'd signed the warrant. "You," he barked, "tell them she ran. Tell them you saw guilt." The rider froze. The girl looked at him, eyes full of something raw, fear, betrayal, memory. He swallowed hard. "I saw nothing," he whispered. "I believed lies because I was weak." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The cane man went pale. "You coward," he spat. The rider raised his voice, louder this time. "I lied," he said. "The warrant is false." Every man holding a torch shifted uneasily. The sheriff turned to the group. "You want justice?" he called. "Then ride behind me, not him." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then one man lowered his torch, then another, then 5 more. The crowd's fire dimmed, doubt replacing rage. The cane man stumbled back, realizing the tide had turned. He reached into his coat. The archer saw it first. "Look out!" he shouted. A glint of metal flashed. A pistol, small, hidden. The cane man aimed at the girl. The cowboy lunged to shield her. The sheriff dove. A shot cracked through the cold night air. The girl screamed. The cane man dropped the pistol, and blood blossomed across his sleeve. He staggered, hit by an arrow. The archer lowered his bow slowly. "He drew first," he said. "He chose." The cane man fell to his knees, clutching his arm. His voice broke. "You fools," he spat. "You think this ends me?" The sheriff rode forward. "It isn't you we fear," he said. "It's the truth behind you." The cane man laughed weakly. "You don't know who you're riding against." The cowboy stiffened. "Then who?" he asked. Thunder rumbled far off, not from the sky, from a column of distant riders emerging on the horizon. Many, too many. The girl whispered, "That's not the townsman." The sheriff's face drained. "No," he said. "That's the men behind the cane man." The archer lifted his bow. "They ride to silence truth." The cowboy held the girl close. The sheriff drew his revolver slowly. The ground trembled under the incoming hooves. A second army was coming. The distant riders thundered closer, but the sheriff didn't flinch. "This ends now," he said. "Stand behind truth, not lies." The broad hunter eyed them warily. "They'll kill us all," he muttered. The archer tightened his grip on the bow. "Only if you don't ride with us," he replied. The cowboy guided the girl forward, saddlebag clutched tight. "Hold on," he said. "We're not leaving empty-handed." The cane man groaned on the ground, clutching his bloodied arm. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "Truth destroys slowly." The sheriff's revolver never wavered. "Truth destroys only liars," he said. "And you proved it tonight." The townsmen behind them murmured, doubt flickering in their eyes. Some dropped torches, others held tight, waiting. The approaching army slowed as they saw the lines of riders, the sheriff, the cowboy, the archer, the girl, and the uncle standing firm. The archer whispered, "They hesitate. Fear of wrong outweighs greed tonight." The girl's hand trembled as she opened the saddlebag. The papers glowed under moonlight, every forged seal exposed, every liar revealed, every injustice catalogued. The sheriff called out, voice ringing across the canyon, "Step forward, anyone who helped frame her father." A long silence answered. Then one, then two, then several men stepped forward reluctantly. The army slowed, confusion rippling. The cane man's eyes widened. The cowboy nudged the girl gently. "It's done," he whispered. "The truth rides with us." The archer released his arrow. It struck a loose boulder, sending a spark skyward, a signal of warning. Everyone froze. No violence was needed. The mere presence of certainty broke their lines. The cane man stumbled backward, defeated in spirit. "You haven't won yet," he muttered, but his authority crumbled with each step toward town, as truth rode ahead. The sheriff mounted fully, revolver holstered. "We return," he said, "and we let the law follow proof, not lies." The girl exhaled, finally allowing herself a small smile. "I thought we'd never survive tonight," she said. "You did survive," the cowboy said softly. "You rode through fire and shadow. You carried truth. Nothing can take that from you." The uncle nodded weakly, gripping her shoulder. "Your father's words live," he said, "and they guide us." The distant army finally slowed, surrendering to the certainty of justice riding in front of them. The fire died behind the cedar ridge. Smoke lingered like a warning. The river whispered their passage, carrying embers to the valley below. The archer looked at the girl. "Remember this night," he said. "The night lies fell before courage." The sheriff turned to the cowboy. "You kept her safe," he said, "and the truth survived. That's all that matters." The girl climbed fully onto the horse. "I will never forget," she whispered, "the ones who stood with me." The cowboy nudged his mount forward. "Then ride," he said. "Ride toward what's right." They moved slowly down the ridge, leaving behind a trail of courage, truth, and justice. The cane man lay defeated, plotting silently, but his power no longer ruled here. And for the first time in a long while, the Apache girl felt the weight of fear lift from her shoulders. The sheriff exhaled, finally letting the tension leave his body. The wind shifted, carrying away the smoke. Silence reclaimed the canyon. If this story of courage, truth, and relentless justice moved you, don't let it end here. Witness how ordinary people rise against corruption, deception, and danger when they stand for what's right. Share this video with friends who appreciate courage under fire and the power of uncovering the truth. Comment below with your thoughts. Who do you think showed the most bravery? Hit the like button if the Apache girl's journey inspired you. And make sure to subscribe for more thrilling Western stories, where every choice counts, every moment matters, and every secret has consequences. Your next unforgettable adventure is just one click away. Don't miss it.